Yeah, where's Johnny? Good morning, folks. Welcome to the Cibo Power Breakfast. I would like to begin by recognizing our elected officials. We have in the room that we know of, Black Mountain Alderman Larry Harris, Lisa Baldwin, Buncombe County School Board, Dusty Pless, Buncombe County School Board, Joe Belcher, Buncombe County Commissioner, Buncombe School Board candidate Stephanie Buckner, NC Senator Terry Van Dyne, Judge Alan Thornburg, Buncombe School Board Pat Bryant, Buncombe School Board, Ann Franklin. Cindy McMahon, candidate, Buncombe School Board. Mike Fryer, Buncombe County Commissioner. Sheriff Van Duncan. He'll be keeping law and order too. DA candidate Ben Scale. District Court Judge Ed Klontz. Buncombe Sheriff candidate Mike Bussell. Nancy Cooper, Buncombe County School Board. Candidate. Excuse me. Mark Hunt, Asheville City Council. Wynn Whistler, Asheville City Council. Commission candidate Miranda DeBrule. Buncombe County Commissioner candidate Christina Barrow. Thank you, folks, for all being here. Oh, David. Oh, excuse me, David. I wouldn't miss you. Chairman, Buncombe County Commissioners. And are there any others in here?
Gentleman back there. Hunter Murphy running for North Carolina Court of Appeals. Good morning.
North Carolina Court of Appeals. Okay, good. Anybody else? All right, now let's have the Pledge of Allegiance and prayer. Josh Holmes will come forward and lead us in that. Josh?
Let's pray first. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for this time together here with our friends and business colleagues, and we thank you for this opportunity to take part in our political process and take part in this discussion. We thank you for those who are willing to give their time and resources to serve their community and state. God, we thank you also for those brave men and women who have fought to keep and preserve those rights that we enjoy. We ask that you be with them now as they continue to protect us, give them strength and encouragement, Lord, and also joy that only you can give. Lord, we ask that you please be with each of these men as they debate this morning, and let all that we say and do here be pleasing to you. It's in your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Let's pledge our allegiance.
With allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thanks, Josh. I know everybody's looking forward to hearing from the candidates for North Carolina House. Our candidates from District 115 are current House member Nathan Ramsey and challenger John Ager. Candidates for the District 116 are current House member Tim Moffitt and challenger Brian Turner. The rules for today's forum are as follows. The candidates will be given 2 minutes for opening remarks. Then we will have a series of questions from the organization, be it Cibo. The candidates will be given 1 minute to respond. Patty will keep the time. Each candidate will be asked the same question. On the first question, I will have District 115 candidates respond, then 116 candidates. I will switch it up each time. If the candidate mentions his opponent during an answer, the opponent will be allowed 30-second rebuttal. For the last question, each candidate will be allowed to ask his opponent 1 question. So be thinking about what you want to ask, Brad. If we have time, we will take questions from the audience. Although the public is present and welcome at our meetings, due to the time constraints, Cibo members will be given first priority. But the rule is that any question asked must be asked of all candidates. I will not allow any one candidate to be singled out. To close, each candidate will be given 1 minute for final remarks. Okay, thanks for coming, and let's get started. Question.
Well, they need to open up.
Oh, excuse me, we got, that's right. I'll keep you straight, okay? All right, 1 minute, opening remarks.
2 minutes.
2 minutes. You got 2 minutes. You heard it better than I read it. Okay. Got my list here. We'll start with Nathan in District 115.
Good morning. My name is Nathan Ramsey. I'm a candidate for North Carolina House. It's been my honor to serve you for just over a year and a half, going on almost 2 years in the North Carolina General Assembly. I grew up here in Buncombe County, attended our public schools, and went to UNC Asheville, and then later went to law school, and then came back, and we started back milking cows in Fairview. Today, my brother, my family, we milk about 170 cows, and he's working really hard right now, and that's the reason I can be here with you. My wife is here. I met her when I ran for county commissioner. She's from West Asheville, and my joke is, she would have not came to the farm and saw a guy covered head to toe in cow manure and said, that's the gentleman I want to be my husband. So if I hadn't been elected as chairman of the Board of Commissioners, we probably would have never got married. But when she came out to Fairview, one time she was spreading cow manure, and she said, close the windows, and I said, honey, that smells like money. But, we worked really hard to try to improve our jobs and the economy in our community. Unemployment's down about 40% since January of 2013. We reformed our tax system to cut taxes for every working family in the state of North Carolina. Reformed our transportation system so that now there's about $600 million of projects funded in Buncombe County, including most of the I-26 connector, which was not funded prior to our transportation reform. We worked with local companies to help them expand, and it's my great honor to serve you. And if you choose to re-elect me, it'll be a great honor to serve you in the North Carolina House.
Just go at it?
Go at it.
All right. Well, I appreciate this. This is my first time to be in the hot seat, so here I am. It's just a darn shame we don't have any Hickory Nut Cat Farm eggs and sausage here at this breakfast. We'll work on that next time. I want to thank you, Cibo. You've done this service to the community for many years. I'm looking around and hoping that maybe you can engage some of our younger entrepreneurs. I don't see anybody with tattoos in this room, but maybe I'm wrong. When I first decided to run, I mentioned to one of my daughters-in-law, and I was thinking about it, and she said, you know, John, I got 2 words for you. You know, I'm a straight shooter. And I said, I sort of braced myself, and she said, personal grooming. You know, underdressed a little bit, but it's hard for me to even put time for breakfast. I live out at Hickory Nut Cat Farm. I married Annie Clark back there in 1971. She's Jamie Clark's daughter. Jamie was my hero. I lived out there. I have 4 sons. I have 2 sons active in the active military, 1 Army, 1 Navy. I have 8 grandchildren. I am sort of the reluctant candidate. I enjoy my farm and my family immensely. Sometimes I think I'm like Burr Rabbit. Please don't send me to Raleigh, but I'm all in, so here we go. I'm not really interested in a big political career. I believe this election is a referendum on the General Assembly of the last 2 years. I'm very interested in fighting back against a legislature that only cares about tax breaks for the wealthy and privatizing education, Medicaid, highways, municipal water systems, and whatever else they can get their hands on. I want to demand that the McCrory administration hire competent North Carolina-based people to run our state's agencies. I will fight to protect our air, land, water from polluters, to extend Medicaid with federal dollars that will create jobs, save our rural hospitals, and help our people to pay for health care. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brian.
All right, good morning. I want to thank Ron for moderating today and Cibo for hosting us. My name is Brian Turner, and I'm running for the North Carolina State House, District 116, which includes right here where we are, at the campus Baby Tech. Now, I grew up in Buncombe County, and my family's been here for generations. In fact, my dad, who's here in the audience, grew up right over there on Orchard Street when my grandfather worked at American Income. There are a lot of familiar faces in this room, which is great. And those who know me know that I have a reputation for being a community-minded business person. I'm someone who believes that community-friendly and business-friendly are not mutually exclusive ideas, but they have to exist in a balance. And one of the reasons why I'm running is because I feel like we have tipped out of balance. When we have our public schools where kids are sharing textbooks that are 10 years old, we're out of balance. When major corporations like Duke Energy are getting a $250 million tax cut while small businesses are seeing tax increases, that's out of balance. And when we are willing to threaten the billion-dollar tourism industry in Buncombe County by allowing fracking, that's out of balance. Now, there are those out there who will try to paint me as some far-left, progressive liberal who's out of touch. But nothing can be further from the truth. In fact, those who know me and those who take the time to get to know me will know that I'm just someone who grew up here, who's trying to raise a family here, who's trying to build a business here, and I just want to get back in balance.
Thanks, Ryan. Tim?
Good morning, Rod. Good morning, everybody. Early in the morning to have these types of meetings, but I appreciate everybody coming out. I certainly appreciate Cibo. Cibo's been a voice for small business in our community for, I guess, 20 or 25 years now. It's been a long time.
Okay.
For those of you that don't know me, my name is Tim Moffitt. I have had the distinct honor of serving District 116 in the North Carolina House of Representatives for the last 2 terms. I'm looking forward to possibly returning to Raleigh for a 3rd term. I'm born and raised right here in Buncombe County. Like Brian, my family's been here for generations. My father's had a business here, AAA Pest Control, for 42 years. I've had the distinct pleasure of having a business in our community for, I guess, 27 or 28 years. You lose track after time. I've recently married. My wife and I have 5 sons. We have 2 in the Air Force. We have 2 attending UNC Chapel Hill, and we're currently raising a 16-year-old at home and having those discussions on actually who's in charge, him or us. Most of you have probably realized that he got his after 9 license recently, and his curfew is now 9:01. So we're in the throes of raising our last teenager. Serving in the House of Representatives has been a distinct honor. When I went to Raleigh, our state was in shambles. After being essentially ran continuously by one party for 140 years, the Republicans were able to get in power for the first time in the Senate since 1870, only for the 3rd time in the House since 1870 and 2011. And we've actually occupied both chambers of the General Assembly as well as the executive branch for the first time since Reconstruction the past 2 years. A lot of problems were before us. We have taken bold steps forward and to get our state on the right path, and the results are before you. Our unemployment, as Nathan mentioned, is down 4 points from 10.4 to 6.4 since we gained control. Our tax policies have moved us from 44th to 17th, and I've just got the stop sign from Patty. It's a real pleasure to be here.
Thanks, Tim. Next item is the questions from Cibo. The candidates will have 1 minute to answer. And Nathan, we're going to start with you down at that far end. So the first question is, the news media and others have reported that we have suffered severe legislative cuts in our education system in North Carolina. According to what you know, what are the actual facts?
Well, the reality is, like most of us, through the recession, and although we're in somewhat of a recovery, it feels for most of us like it's still really tough economic times. And so, our education, K-12, is no different. And we have, while funding overall has gone up and student enrollment has gone up, we have faced a lot of challenges. I voted for the budget this year because, according to nonpartisan General Assembly staff, we gave the largest teacher pay raise in at least a decade and one of the largest in history for teachers. So a beginning teacher in Buncombe County Schools can make about $35,000 this year to start, including their local pay. and they'll make about $37,000 next year. And a more experienced teacher can make up into the $70,000 range. So there's a lot of things we need to do. We need to raise funding for textbooks and other things, but we first had to get our physical house in order. I voted against the budget last year because I didn't think it was sufficient for K-12, but this year overall I think it was reasonably good.
John?
I think our per pupil payments in North Carolina are still 48 in the country. We basically just took the deck chairs on the Titanic and shifted them around. Education has always been what has gotten North Carolina ahead. I am proud of my Democratic forebears like Harry Sanford and Jim Hunt, who emphasize we don't have oil, we don't have natural resources, we have people, and we invest in our people and our state improves. I am more than looking forward to going down and making sure we have a world-class education system in North Carolina. And it's not just the money. We're in a time of great change. Educational policies are changing. How do we deal with the new technology we have, the whole new relationship to knowledge and information. Information's at our fingertips. Going to school isn't just coming up with the information. We can do a lot better. Thanks a lot.
Right.
With our public education system, there are a lot of numbers floating around out there, percentage increases, per pupil spending, but the fact of the matter is, when you go into the classrooms, you see that they're larger than ever. More kids per class. When you look at the materials that they're using, the tools they have, they're insufficient for giving our kids the education that they need. And we're not just talking about K through 12. We've also got to make sure we're looking at our community college system and our university system. When I was working at UNC Asheville, I saw firsthand the impacts the cuts had on our public university system. And we are undermining the economic future of this state if we do not look and revamp how we're treating public education all the way through.
Ben? Thank you, Rod. I'd like to echo what Nathan has to say, but I'd also like to say that as someone who actually went to public school, the classes today are decidedly less in size than they were when I was in public school. And the performances of our students when I was, for my generation, were higher than they are now. So we have a lot of work that needs to be done in education. But when it comes to education funding, the big cuts to education actually happened the 2-year biennium session before Republicans took control of the General Assembly. Those were the most dramatic cuts to education that our state have ever seen. Those cuts still resonate throughout education at all levels. And the General Assembly has done a great job in regards to bringing funding back to public education and doing the things that are necessary to make public education better. And the most recent assertion that there was a $500 million slash or cut to public education was recently given 2 Pinocchios by the Washington Post.
Thanks. Tim, I'm going to start with you on the second question. Do you favor relaxation of the annexation laws for the municipalities, including extending the 1 mile extraterritorial zoning area?
No, I've got that. Thank you, Rod. Well, as most people may or may not know, one of the first legislative undertakings for Tim Moffitt was actually ending involuntary annexation. We have had cities extending their overreach into the rural communities for decades in our state, and there was really no voice for those folks in our rural communities. So when Republicans took control of the General Assembly in 2011, one of the first initiatives I set forward to do was change the annexation laws to rein in the overreach of our cities. Most recently, I have focused on extraterritorial jurisdictions and lifted the ETJs in Buncombe County simply because cities cannot impose their will on the backs of people who do not have an opportunity to weigh their opinions at the ballot box. Right.
Cities and other municipalities are not and should not be allowed to just unilaterally annex neighboring areas. People need to have a say in what municipality they belong to. I think the annexation laws that are in place are good. I think that they protect a lot of people who may or may not want to, or who don't want to be part of the city of Asheville, Weaverville, Black Mountain, what have you. So I do not think that we should be relaxing those laws or changing them as they are.
Thank you. John?
Yeah, I feel like that, I think this is true about the facts that our urban areas are the most vibrant areas where most of the job creation is going on. Urban areas generally need much more rules in order to keep them healthy and keep people getting along well. Out in the country, we don't need very many rules out there. We just have to deal with my own family on the farm. You know, as far as the ETJ, I mean, I think the argument for it would be that if you don't want a whole lot of sprawl going on the edge of the city, that then has to be changed around when you get a lot of traffic or you get a lot of problems. You know, we have Weaverville in my district, which I think was handling the ETJ law pretty well. So I need to learn more about it, and I don't know exactly what the current rules are. I just know that I feel like that this legislature has been very anti-municipality, and I will be very pro-municipality.
Well, the answer is, I do not support involuntary annexation. I do not support extending ETJ. The folks in Weaverville now are regulated by your Buncombe County Commissioners. Chairman Gant and the Board of Commissioners, they set the rules. The rules will be very similar to what the town of Weaverville has. And so I personally think you should be regulated by the people you can vote for. We used to have meetings out in Fairview, and folks said they're going to come out and annex us, and we need to incorporate Fairview. We said, well, that really can't happen even under the old law. But today, according to North Carolina law, involuntary annexation is a thing of the past, and it's good to see my friends on the other side of the aisle agree with that, because when I was on the Buncombe County Board of Commissioners, many on that side of the aisle did not take the same stance.
Thank you. Question 3, we'll go, John, you will be first, Nathan, and then Tim, and then Brian. So John, there is a segment of the area's population who appear to advocate for the closing plant at Lake Dewey. As a legislature, what is your opinion?
Well, we're dealing with coal ash and all those issues. I believe Lake Julian is the primary electrical supplier for Western North Carolina. I'm all for electricity. I use a lot of it. I want the Duke Energy to deal with the ash there, and I believe they are, and I think that they will be moving that ash, and they've been moving it out to the airport. I think that the era of fossil fuels, it will be slowly closing, but it's going to take several decades. We have one of the most vibrant renewable energy efforts in West North Carolina, anywhere in the country, and in North Carolina. I support renewables, and I think that that will be where we will be going in the future.
We certainly need electricity to power our communities, power our small businesses, and our homes. And North Carolina has one of the most stringent renewable energy standards in the country. When I was on the Board of Commissioners, we passed a resolution in support of Senate Bill 3 that requires a certain percentage of our power to come from renewable sources. I supported the coal ash legislation that's going to clean up the Asheville coal plant, one of the first in the state that requires them to Duke Energy to responsibly take care of their coal ash. The majority of folks on both sides of the aisle supported that legislation because it will clean up our groundwater. It will make North Carolina the leader in the country in dealing with coal ash. And this is something that's been around for 100 years, and it's not easily solved, but it's something that's very important. Certainly, we don't have the technology today to cut off our coal plants and have the power that our businesses and our communities need. And so in the future, perhaps that can happen, but until that happens, We need coal to support that. North Carolina, under clean smokestacks, has one of the most stringent rules in the country on coal plants, and we're a leader in that.
Thank you, sir. Tim? You're up.
Thank you, Rod. I enjoy having Nathan around because he certainly communicates so effectively that he answered the question perfectly. In regards to whether or not we should close the plant at Lake Julian, the answer would be no. In regards to the segment that's actually advocating that we close it, I'd like to remind everyone that that segment of the population also supported people who specifically gave exemptions to Duke Energy and other similar energy-producing companies in regards to how they deal with coal owners. So I find it fairly hypocritical that they would be advocating closing it when they were part of the problem that we're trying to solve. Right?
Jason, we've got what, 2 coal turbines out there? And what, 1 natural gas? 2 natural gas, okay. Now, for us to have the reliable, inexpensive energy that everyone in this room uses and appreciates in the mountains, we need to keep that plant going. So it's just a fact of reality right now. Like Nathan said, would it be great if someday we can move and do something different? Absolutely. And I'd like to work as a legislator with people like you to move toward that goal. But right now, this is what we have, this is what we need, and we can stick with it. So I don't see us closing those plants down in the near future. I think it's a worthy goal to work toward.
Thank you. For question 4, we'll go with Brian will be number 1, Tim 2, Nathan number 3, and then John. So Brian, as the gas tax revenues decrease, what is your plan to replace the revenue stream?
Well, the gas taxes that we have in North Carolina are some of the highest in the Southeast. But through fuel efficiency increases, we've seen, obviously, loss of revenues. And one thing that's always bothered me is the fact that if you buy gas for your lawnmower, you're paying for highway upkeep. I've never quite understood that. But I know a lot of folks are looking at things like toll roads, like the I-77 toll road. If that's a route we're going to go down, we need to make sure that's in control of the state and not private contractors. We need to look at alternative ways to measure highway usage and then figure out the best ways to generate revenue to those who are using the highways and how they're using them.
Thank you. Tim?
Thank you. One of the first things that the General Assembly did when Republicans took control was stop taking money from the highway fund and diverting it for other purposes. A lot of our backlog in maintenance is simply because money that was collected from the gas tax was diverted from its primary use and spent for other things. So we have gotten that under control. In regards to how we're going to manage that moving forward, we are looking at all options that we need to look at that have worked in other states. We have discounted a number of those options. One of the things that we have looked at is potentially adding lanes to existing highways and use a dynamic tolling mechanism for those that choose to have a more expeditious ride to work or through the state. They would actually pay a toll for that. But for folks who use those roads locally, they would not necessarily have to use that lane unless they wanted to. So dynamic tolling has been a thought that's been out there. The General Assembly has not made any commitment in any particular direction at this point.
Thanks, Tim. Nathan?
The good news is under the current funding system and with the new transportation formula, Buncombe County, our major projects have been funded. Previously, under the old formula, a lot of them weren't. So we have about $600 million of projects in Buncombe County, I-26 all the way to the Henderson County line, to the farmers market, the B section of the I-26 connector, the bridges over the French Broad River, the state exchange interchange in Candler on I-40. All of those have been funded in 10 years. The challenge North Carolina has is North Carolina is one of the fastest growing states in the nation, and we've got to find a better way to deal with this. But the federal government has the same problem. The difference is the federal government can print money to offset where their deficits are in their highway trust fund. North Carolina can't do that. And but long term, as fuel efficiency standards increase, the gas tax is less effective as being a good model to fund our transportation.
John?
Yeah, I'd say that that's the really good news is that our cars are more fuel efficient. We can thank some government programs for that. You know, putting in toll roads in North Carolina, Lexus lanes, I think some people call them, having Spanish corporations up front the money, and then our tolls, $20 a ride tolls going to pay off that debt. I don't know. That just doesn't seem like the North Carolina that I've grown up with here. We've got to have great infrastructure. We are a growing state, and so that's going to cost us. We are going to have to find the revenue to do it. One of the reasons we have a higher gas tax is because we have a lot of roads. We were once known as the good road state. I'm not sure where we can find the revenue, but we're going to have to find it.
Thank you. Question 5 is the favorite one. Now's the time to ask your opponent a question. We're going to start with Nathan, come down the line, and you will have 1 minute to answer the question.
I'll give you a multiple choice. If you don't like this one, I can always ask one. John, would you vote for the House budget this year?
The short-term budget?
The budget that the North Carolina General Assembly, the House of Representatives, passed this year, would you have voted for that budget?
I have to be honest, I probably would have wanted more revenue. I think the long-term problem with North Carolina is that we are now a revenue-starved state. And all of these problems we talk about will not be solved until we find more revenue. I don't think shifting the tax burden to working people from the wealthy and the corporations is the answer. So I don't think I would have voted for that. I'm looking for a way to fund this state.
Okay, John?
My turn, all right.
Your turn.
I have a sort of a similar question. Given that $500 million has been cut in our revenue stream, and that revenue losses going forward are worse than projected, and that there are more cuts coming January the 1st, and given your verbal support for the North Carolina public school system, how do you plan to generate additional sufficient revenue increase to pay the education bills of our state?
Okay. First, the $500 million number we know is false. The Washington Post said it was false. So, and you might not agree with everything in the Washington Post, but they said that number was false. North Carolina went through tax reform. And the effect of tax reform, at the end of the day, wasn't just to give every person in North Carolina a tax cut, which it did. And the nonpartisan General Assembly staff said it did. The purpose was that we had the highest marginal tax rates in the Southeast. And when I was a Buncombe County Commissioner, we were competing against projects in South Carolina and other places that we would offer incentives and other things, and we would just get to their starting point. So that was the purpose of lowering our marginal rates. Hopefully our economy will continue to improve. We're creating about 100,000 jobs a year in North Carolina, and that's ultimately what's going to get the revenue to support our schools that will fund our education. What happened in the late 90s is we raised teacher pay. That's the first time North Carolina got close to the national average in teacher pay. We cut taxes. We did a lot of good things, but you know why we could do that? Because our economy was doing really well at that time. And so at the end of the day, we get our economy going, we'll have the money to support the schools and other services we need.
Right.
Legislation and programs and different initiatives don't necessarily follow the calendars that we'd like them to. Some projects are longer term than others. Should I be elected in November, what is the one law, program, initiative that you would like me to pick up and carry on your behalf?
You know, I actually thought about all the kind of questions that Brian would ask, but I never thought that he would actually come on my side from a political spectrum standpoint and ask a question about what I would like of mine that he could carry forward. I would like you to look at the body of my work and understand that the types of legislation that I have advocated for and put into place are those that are rooted in real sound fiscal conservative values that we share here in the mountains. There is a tremendous amount of fluidity when it comes to policy making in the General Assembly, and there are a lot of special interests there that are advocating very strongly for their positions, and I would ask you to not yield to those special interests. Keep our community in mind. And when it comes to the types of policies that you would have an opportunity to work on in the distant future, if you ever get elected to this position, I would like you to keep our values in mind. I'm going to ask Brian a yes or no question. Which of the following Republican policies do you support? Repeal of the regressive penny sales tax imposed by the Democrats on the backs of the working poor. This biennium budget that moved us from 46th in teacher pay to 32nd. The coal ash plan, which is the first plan of its kind in the entire nation that was put in place after the Democrats ignored the issue for decades. And the tax simplification and modernization plan that the General Assembly enacted simply to bring our tax code in line with the changing business nature of our state. So would you support all of the above or none of the above?
The question is in 4 parts.
Just one question.
One question. I think that
So yes
if
or
I
no question.
I appreciate the way you frame the question as a yes or no, but I think that when I look at the budget that was passed, it reminds me of one of my favorite Clint Eastwood movies, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. The good thing is that a lot of state employees saw a raise, and I think that's good. Even though it wasn't necessarily the plan that I would like to see in place, it was a good start. The bad is that that budget also was crammed full of other stuff, like a Thanksgiving turkey. You had in there things like crazy drone provisions in legislation that never saw the light of day until they're in the budget. And I think the ugly was just the process by which the budget was voted on. As a business person, I would never sign a contract that I hadn't read and understood. So I don't understand why anyone would vote for a budget that landed on their desk in the morning, it's 260 pages long, and they'd be expected to vote for that afternoon.
Thank you. Next is the last item, which is you get closing remarks for 1 minute. Then we'll start with you and go down to questions. I think we have time. We have a burning question to ask all of the candidates. Thank you. Make it a question.
In line with the fact that the National Highway Trust Fund is going to be insolvent by May the 15th of next year, how do you anticipate funding the I-26 connector project?
Nathan, you want to start?
I'm an optimist, and I think hopefully in Washington, after they try everything else, the folks up there will do the right thing and be able to figure out how to continue solving our transportation problems. They have a long-term problem, like I mentioned earlier, and And you know, I think folks on both sides of the aisle understand that we have to fund our infrastructure. And so while you know, a lot of those are federal dollars, and if the federal government is unable to solve their problems, then it will trickle down to our states. And and so I'm going to be an optimist and hope that they work out the problems and continue that through.
Yeah, it might be one of these midnight deals in Washington, like we've seen a lot. They can't agree on good roads. Lord help us all.
If we're going to talk about the federal government, I'm going to go back to my good, bad, and ugly, because I think there's a lot of that coming out of DC. But the I-26 connector is critical for not just Buncombe County, but for communities and counties up and down the I-26 corridor. So if the feds can't get it together, I hope the state will realize the importance of that road. But I'll tell you this, we can't bankrupt our state to do it.
One of the first things that needs to take place is at the federal level, they need to stop diverting federal highway dollars away from what its intended use is. And I think what we're seeing right now at the federal level and the state level is the money collected for infrastructure has been diverted, and now the cost to bring that infrastructure back up to what we would consider standards that we have grown accustomed to is exponentially more expensive. When it comes to the I-26 connector, one of the most amazing things to me is the fact that we have agreed as a community to what the community wanted literally 16 or 18 years ago, but it's going to cost us an additional $140 million to get it done. So we really need to get our financial house in order. We need to protect the revenues that come from the use taxes that we currently charge. And again, we need to look at all the options, but hopefully by getting our financial house in order, we don't need to go down the path of dynamic toll lanes, and we can really protect the infrastructure and the process of bringing it back up to speed.
All right, we got time for one? No? That's it? Okay, let's get to our closing remarks. 1 minute. Tim, we'll start with you and go down the line. Where's it going? This is Tim.
Again, it's been a real honor to serve in the General Assembly for the last 2 terms. It's not anything that I would have ever had in my bucket list to serve the public in this way. I have always been an advocate of limited government. I've always been an advocate of keeping Big Brother out of your lives, and I would like to think that the 4 years that I have spent in Raleigh, if you look at the body of my work, I've demonstrated those principles. Our community, the city of Asheville, Buncombe County, and our surrounding neighbors have often been overlooked when it comes to the good things that can happen coming out of Raleigh. And I would like to believe that with the good work from the strong representation out in the West that you currently have in place, that those things have changed and that the state of North Carolina no longer stops at Interstate 77. So I'd appreciate your support. It would certainly be an honor to return back to Raleigh, and if I do have that honor, you can certainly count on me to continue along the path that I have carved out over the last 4 years. Right?
I do want to thank everyone for coming out this morning bright and early. I think it's been a good discussion today, a good talk about where people stand. I want to go back to the concept of balance. Again, that's what I'm looking to bring, balance, a balanced approach, working with people from not just across the aisle, but across the entire spectrum. We need people who are going to bring folks together. It's not about the politics of division. It's about bringing people together. And I hope that everyone in this room understands that should I be fortunate enough to serve down in Raleigh, I'm not going to be going down there to represent Democrats. I'm not going to go down there to represent Republicans. I'm not going to go down there to represent special interests. I'm going to go down there to represent the people of District 116 who were good enough to send me there.
About 20 years ago, I wrote a book called We Plowed God's Fields about Annie's grandfather and the Farmers Federation. And he talked about the fact that he went to a political rally back in those days, in the 30s, I think, and the rally went on for 6 hours. And he said the capacity for mountain people to inhale hot air is beyond comprehension. So I want to thank you all. This is great. We needed the signs down here. I'm a fair-minded, business-friendly citizen. I think one of the real unsung treasures we have in Buncombe County is a vibrant group of young people that are coming here looking for a life to lead. We need to untap their entrepreneurial power. I have had a wide range of experiences in my life, and I'm willing to take on the prompt of the state. Thank you very much.
Thank you for allowing me to be here this morning. It's been a great honor to serve you in the North Carolina General Assembly. I've tried to be an independent voice in Raleigh. It's really not about the political party. It's about doing what's best for Buncombe County. And a lot of people talk about that, but my voting record shows that. The 8 years I served on the Board of Commissioners with 4 Democrats who were wonderful people. I've had the opportunity to serve in Raleigh for almost the past 2 years, and I voted against my party when it wasn't easy to do that. I voted against the budget last year. I voted against fracking because I didn't think we had done quite everything we should to make it as safe as possible. But at the end of the day, my job is to represent you. And so I've probably made the Democrats and the Republicans in Raleigh mad at me, and that's okay. That's sort of like at home. I make everybody mad at me. But John's my neighbor. I've known John since I was probably about 2 years old. And we're going to run a campaign about the future of Buncombe County and how to best help the working people of this community move forward. I appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Gentlemen, thank you very much. Break, and we'll come back and see if the Speaker of the House, Tom Tillman.
Sorry about that. Fine, how you talk?
I tell you, I woke up this morning
You know,